Okay, let's talk about something that sounds really simple, but isn't workplace fairness. What does that actually mean? I mean, it seems straightforward, right? But the reality is, it's super complex. It touches on everything from our own hidden biases all the way up to federal law. So in this explainer, we're going to unpack what fairness really looks like in the workplace today.
So to kick things off, let's look at a real-world example. Check out a massive company like LabCorp. We're talking 75,000 employees. And they had this classic problem, Their leadership, well, it didn't really look like their actual workforce or, their customers. So they tried something really interesting. They created this reverse diverse mentoring program. They paired senior execs with younger, more diverse employees. But get this, it wasn't just for the execs to mentor the younger folks. It was so the execs could learn from them. And this wasn't just some PR stunt. It was a seriously smart move to better understand their market and, honestly, to build stronger leaders.
But here's the thing. That's one program at one company. A great one, for sure. But how do you take that idea of fairness and scale it up, across the entire country, for millions and millions of workers in who knows how many different jobs? How do you actually turn this concept of fairness into a set of rules that everyone has to play by?
Well, that's exactly where the government comes in. They've created a whole framework for this, and it's called Equal Employment Opportunity, or EEO for short. You can think of this as the absolute foundation of workplace fairness in the U.S.
So what's the big idea behind EEO? At its core, it's actually pretty simple. It means that all those big employment decisions, hiring, firing, promotions, they should be based on how well you can do the job, period, not on personal stuff. It's really all about trying to create a level playing field for everybody.
And the absolute bedrock of all of this is Title VII of the Civil Rights Act of 1964. This is the big one. It came right out of the civil rights movement, and it makes it flat out illegal for most employers to discriminate based on these really core parts of who you are.
But life isn't static, and the law gets that. It recognizes that we all go through different stages. So you've got things like the ADA, which protects older workers, specifically those over 40, from getting pushed out for younger, and let's be honest, often cheaper labor. And then there's the Pregnancy Discrimination Act, which is huge. It basically says that starting a family shouldn't mean you have to end your career. And look, this isn't just some abstract theoretical problem. The data is pretty clear. Every single year, for years and years, we see tens of thousands of people filing complaints because they feel they've been treated unfairly just because of their age. That's not a blip. That's a consistent pattern, and it really just goes to show how necessary these protections still are. The protections don't stop there either. They also cover our health and our abilities. You've got the Americans with Disabilities Act, or ADA, which is just massive. It's all about ensuring people with disabilities get a fair shot at jobs. And then there's this really fascinating one called GINA. It stands for the Genetic Information Non-Discrimination Act. It basically stops a company from, say, looking at your genetic test and deciding not to hire you because you might get sick down the road. Pretty wild, right?
Now check this out. When you actually dig into the data on this stuff, you find something that might surprise you. I think a lot of us, when we hear the word disability, we think of things we can physically see. But look at this 2021 data. The single biggest category of ADA complaints, a full third, is for emotional or psychiatric conditions. It's just such a powerful reminder that disabilities are incredibly diverse, and many are invisible.
Okay, so we've got all these laws on the books. That's great, but a rule isn't worth much if there's no one there to call a foul, right? So who's the referee here? Who actually enforces all this? Well, it's basically a team effort across the whole government. You've got Congress, the legislative branch, writing the laws. Then you have the executive branch, think the president and all the agencies, that actually enforces them. And finally, the judicial branch, the courts, are the ones who interpret what those laws mean in the real world. It's like a whole system of checks and balances, but specifically for workplace fairness. And when it comes to enforcement, the main player you need to know about is the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission, or the EEOC. If you ever feel like you've been discriminated against at your job, these are the folks you call. Their job is to investigate those complaints, and they can even take a company to court for you. And let me tell you, they are busy. In 2021 alone, they took on more than 61,000 charges of discrimination. Just stop and think about that number for a second. Every single one of those isn't just a statistic. It's a real person who felt the system was rigged against them. It just puts the sheer scale of this whole challenge into perspective. So that brings up a really important question. How do you actually prove discrimination? It's usually not as simple as finding some smoking gun email where a manager says something awful.
The law actually looks at this in two totally different ways. First, was it intentional? And second, was it the unintentional result of a rule that seemed totally fair on the surface?
And this is a super important difference, so let's break it down. The first kind is called disparate treatment. This is the obvious stuff. It's intentional. It's literally someone saying, I'm not going to hire you because you're a woman with young kids. It's direct. But the second kind, disparate impact, is way more subtle. This is when a company has a policy that seems totally neutral, like, say, a really tough strength test for an office job. But in reality, that test screens out way more women than men, and you don't even need to be that strong for the job anyway. The intent wasn't to discriminate, but the impact was.
So that's the tricky part, right? If it's not on purpose, how do you even catch it? How can you use cold, hard data to show that a policy is having an unfair effect?
One of the main tools investigators use is a kind of rule of thumb called the 4/5 rule. Let's just walk through this example together. It makes it super clear. So you've got a hotel. They hire 60 out of 100 white applicants. That's a 60% hiring rate. Simple enough? But they only hire 40 out of 200 black applicants. That's a 20% hiring rate. Now you take the lower rate, 20%, and divide it by the higher rate, 60%. What do you get? About 33%. Well, 33% is way, way less than 80%, which is 4/5. Now, this doesn't automatically mean the company is guilty, but it is a massive red flag that tells the EEOC, hey, you need to dig in here and find out what's going on.
But here's the thing we really have to remember. All of these laws, all these rules and tests, they're just the bare minimum. They're the floor, not the ceiling. The real goal isn't just about not getting sued. It's about moving past compliance and actually building a workplace culture that's genuinely fair.
And this quote just nails it, I think. The practice of valuing diversity has no single form. It is not written into law or business theory. You just can't pass a law that forces people to have a great culture. You can't mandate respect. That kind of thing has to be built, brick by brick by the people in the company.
And really, that's the whole point. It brings us right back to where we started with that LabCorp story. They didn't start that mentoring program just to check some legal box. They did it because they knew that bringing in all these different perspectives would make them a stronger, smarter, more successful company. And that's the key takeaway. A truly fair workplace isn't just about following the rules. It's actually a huge strategic advantage.
So, to wrap this all up, I want to leave you with a final thought to chew on. The world of work is constantly changing. I mean, just look at how the COVID pandemic completely upended everything and forced companies to deal with brand new ethical questions about health, safety, and remote work. So the question is, what's next? What's the next big crisis or technology that's going to force us to ask a whole new set of questions? And how will our very definition of what's fair at work have to change to keep up?